Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glen Sutherland.
Welcome to a new episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. with Glen Sutherland. This week, my guest is Jagger Bablin. Jagger, you want to start off by just giving everybody a bit of an introduction to yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Glenn. Just to kind of give you the 411, my name is Jagger. I'm a Canadian citizen, born in a small town in British Columbia, Canada. Moved when I graduated college to Vancouver, lived there for quite a few years. Last 3 years, I moved to South America. So I currently live in Medellín, Colombia. I still spend my summers when the weather is nicer in Vancouver. So I'm a bit of a snowbird. Been an entrepreneur since, I was about 20 years old, owned various types of businesses. I've been full-time in real estate for about 6 years now. Started off wholesaling, transitioned to buying, and the market was a little bit different back then, to say the least, but we transitioned to finding a kind of private money partner where we're buying property sight unseen and, within an hour, cash sight unseen, and then selling them a week, trashing them out, selling them a week later for, a substantial amount more. Obviously, markets changed over the last several years, so we've had to transition. We've transitioned to doing, wholetailing, to fix and flips, to we're actually back to doing more wholesaling now, just because the flipping market was a little bit slow. Market's been not so great the last several years. So that's kind of my story. Happy to be here. Super excited to dive in here.
That's awesome. For anyone, I'm familiar with this, but if anyone's listening and they're like, when you said wholetailing, you wanted to just describe that to people, because a lot of people use the term wholesaling. So just if you want to define the difference for people who are listening to this and may have that question.
Wholetailing is very similar to wholesaling, but you're typically doing a little bit of renovations. That's my understanding, or that's how I kind of note things, to the property. So the property might need some type of quick cosmetic work, maybe paint, or there's a few little things that you can do that could substantially kind of revive or increase the value of your property. So when you're doing that, you're kind of taking the property under contract, agreeing with the homeowner on a set price, and then coming in and ideally doing 10, 15K of work, maybe at most, and then reselling it on the market on an MLS, typically through a flat fee broker, although sometimes we do use realtors for those sorts of things. Is that your understanding, Glenn? Or
Yeah. And so when you're doing wholetailing, are you actually closing on the property, or are you just doing this while it's under contract?
We're just doing this under contract, right? So we're not taking title, not doing seller finance or anything like that. So we just have an agreement, and then with the seller to be able to do these sorts of things.
Have you ever had the seller not fulfill their part of the contract, and now they have a house that's had some facelift to it?
I wouldn't say that, but we have had issues in the past where we have given sellers money to, and the business, as you know, Glenn, is all about learning, and the only way you learn is to F up a lot of times. So
I know. I get it.
Unfortunately, we've had plenty of F ups over the years. One of them, I believe we sent the seller $4,000, and then we kept selling it. And the next day, the seller's phone was off, and we couldn't get a hold of him. So we lost $4K just sending him, money. These deals they're all, as you know, Glenn, these deals sometimes require out-of-the-box thinking. So whatever you can do to kind of facilitate the deal, helping the seller move, giving them money for this or that or the other, by all means. So in this case, we sent the seller some money, and he bounced, and that was that. Other than that, no, we haven't had any deal or situations like that where we've done any renos and the seller has refused to. We usually feel pretty confident with these sorts of deals if we're going to do a wholesale like that. I think that the preferred method, now that I've learned a little bit more over the years, though, is you probably want to do you probably want to close on the deal potentially, and then do some type of seller finance with a balloon in, whatever amount of time, something like that. But
so you control the deed then?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It makes a little bit more sense. How do you structure those, or do you actually do those yourself?
No, I don't do the wholesales myself. I usually will just actually close on them, do the renovations, and then sell them again, or do the refinance. So I don't do a lot of wholesaling. So it's or wholetailing either, or so it's not my
Yeah.
specialty. I've done a bunch of wholesaling, but it's not my specialty.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to like I have a pretty dirty connotation with wholesalers in general, just because if you're buying, we buy or have bought or attempted to buy from wholesalers all the time. And for the most part, the deal. You got to look at 100 deals to get maybe one or two that might pencil out, just because there's no barrier to entry to being a wholesaler, right? So there's all these courses out there, people teaching wholesaling, and most of the people who are doing this that think maybe, hey, it's an easy way to make money. But so they'll give you a deal that's, hey, oh, there's a 100K spread here. Okay. And then you look at the deal and then you realize, okay, renovations are twice as much as they said they're going to be. They're
Yeah.
not accounting for any lender fees. They're not accounting for realtor fees. So if I actually took this deal on, I would lose money, right? So that's kind of your typical experience with wholesaling. So it's kind of amusing to me that I'm actually wholesaling again, because I don't like wholesalers, and I guess I am a wholesaler now per se. And the reason we got back into wholesaling now is just because the flipping market, we've been flipping for the last several years, and it's been properties have just taken a lot longer. They didn't appraise for what they thought they were going to do. The market, took it definitely softened the last year and a half or so, 2 years. So properties that we thought would appraise at this weren't appraising at that. So we didn't, and we've had properties just sitting on market for much longer than we expected. So we thought, okay, what's an easy way to kind of make some quick cash here and get back on things? Because one thing we do, I don't know what you do for lead gen. If you like, how do you get your deals, Glenn? Like, what are you doing?
Are you interested in investing in the US? I honestly see Canadians making tons of mistakes, simple mistakes that could be avoided by just a quick phone call. Honestly, I think we should just get on a 15-minute call. You ask me some questions, I answer some questions, and I tell you a little bit about the coaching program. We see if it's a fit. My coaching program is completely different than other people's. What my goal is to help you actually implement the material. All the videos are pre-recorded, so you can just zip through those on your own time. But when you're actually buying property, this is what sets me apart, is that we actually sit down, you do your deal analysis, you have questions, ask me some questions. Let me go through it with you. Let me help you. And this is what's going to set it apart. This is why you're going to avoid mistakes. You're going to miss those little things that you just missed that could cost you a lot of money. Maybe I can see it. Maybe my experience. I've been doing this for a while down in the US. Let me help you. Let's do a quick 15-minute call. If that's of interest to you, go to glensutherland.com and you can book a 15-minute call. Anyway, hope this is helpful. Thanks, everyone.
There's a bit of secret sauce there, but I'll give the high level on this podcast. But there's wholesalers, there's my contacts, there's that team that I've set up, so I get lead gen a lot from them. So they do a lot of the work for me, and they almost work as like a bird dog or a wholesaler, depending on how they're paid.
Gotcha. So you've got just people on the boots on the ground, or people feeding deals, or
feeding deals. They have their own problems, and they will give you their problems to see if you can solve them, right? They're like, hey, I got this problem with all this, and can you find something to work? Like, we had a property in Toledo, and the contractor was putting liens on the property and planning, just wanted their money, and the homeowner was planning to sue the contractor because the work wasn't good, and they're just conflict, and you just come in and you just go, what do you need? What do you need? Well, let's find something in the middle, and I'll take the property. I'll pay you, and walk away with this, and find something that works for everybody. And then if you get known as the guy that can fix these weird problems, or just honestly, it's just being like a social worker and sitting in the middle and listening to both sides.
You have a very good point there. A lot of this business is problem solving and thinking outside the box. Like, how do I fix, like, what's the objective here? How are we going to get there? And a lot of it is not necessarily traditional thinking, like, what do I need to do to get this done, kind of thing, right? So it's interesting you say that. we do a lot of internal marketing, right? So we've
Yeah.
got a team that does our own lead gen, which is good and bad. Obviously, it's more work, more money, more challenging, but in general, the deals we get are always direct to seller, which is great. So we're not paying. I prefer not to deal with wholesalers because wholesalers are like a middleman. So we're trying to cut out the middleman because wholesalers are always going to try and take their cut, and then you gotta
And they want as
bang.
much as they can possibly get out of it.
Yes, exactly. But as I was saying, it's just interesting now that we're actually wholesaling again, because I think that's such a dirty word, or it was a little bit of a dirty word. I feel dirty just saying that we're doing that, but we just recently kind of pivoted to that late last year. We're still doing flips in our home state of we're doing wholesaling in about 15 states right now. We're doing lead gen. We haven't done deals in all those states yet, but our home states were Alabama and Georgia. We're kind of more focusing on the Atlanta area now just for flips because we've got crews and contractors and everything set up there. We know our numbers pretty well. But outside of that, most of the other states we're doing wholesaling, creative deals, sub two deals, whatever kind of, there's no one size fits all. We're doing a lot of foreclosures. Definitely big on foreclosures this year, so we're diving into sub twos, all sorts of deals. But with those deals, like I said, we're looking to more wholesale them or partner or whatever way. You got to look at, as you know, looking at a deal. There's dozens of not dozens, but there's a lot of different ways to potentially underwrite, and you kind of got to look at a deal and be able to see what makes sense. And especially if you're doing internal lead gen, you got to be able to have a bunch of different tools in your buy box, sub two, seller finance, wrap, whatever it is going to make sense for the deal.
And what you're saying is exactly what makes wholesaling still work. Because I've interviewed lots of wholesalers, and the common thing I find when I'm having the conversation after the actual podcast is that they're like, if the ones who just are negotiating on the price, they just can't find enough deals, right? Because they just can't find to buy it based on the ARV, and they just can't put it together when they just need the discount on price. And if you understand like creative selling and seller financing and subject to that, you can actually structure something that someone else wants, and you're not throwing so many deals away. So you said you're doing lead gen though. So does your team, like, you have to train all of those people who are on the phone to do that as well?
Yeah,
Negotiate
yeah.
that.
Like I said, we've been around for 6 years, so I've got a roster of people that we can call on. Most of our we call them ASs, or acquisition specialists. So they're kind of like the openers. So we'll do lead gen, a lead will come in, they'll call and vet them. These are just outsourced Filipino workers for the most part. Most of our team is outsourced. The higher level people, like the acquisitions managers, are North American based typically, or at least expats live in South America, so you can pay them a little bit less. But yeah, we've had to, it's a pretty substantial role, just training and organizing and being efficient with all those. Like I said, the flip side of that is you are getting direct to seller deals that are always going to be like the best deals out there
Totally
typically,
agree.
right?
Yeah.
Because you're not having to deal with someone else who's trying to get their little piece of the pie. So we're going direct to seller. The trade-off for that is, we've had to drain and organize and get process manuals and scripts and all that sort of stuff for all these sorts of lead gen kind of methods.
So this just popped in my head, just to go back a little bit. When you were saying, you're transitioning from doing flipping to switching back to wholesaling where you started, one of the reasons that you wanted to switch back is because the days on market was longer and it's just harder to sell. But do you not have that same constraint doing wholesaling because, you have to, there's fewer buyers, would there not be?
No,
Buying wholesale deals?
Yeah, no, great question, and I can completely see where you're coming from. But a deal is a deal. Like, we actually know how to underwrite deals, and we know what our numbers are. So when we give someone a deal, we're pretty confident the numbers are legit. I have a business partner. He's a developer in Vancouver. He does the renovation side. We have a team, a couple people that underwrite deals and renovations and do a complete scope of work. So we're pretty bang on with our numbers. So anything we get is going to be a deal for somebody. Just in our market, it isn't necessarily. In other markets, I should say, if we're in a market outside of Alabama or Georgia where we don't have crews or this or that or the other, it's just easier to flip or take our money however we can. So in general, for the most part, if we take a property on, we're pretty confident that we can find a buyer. A lot of the lead gen we are doing is we're doing entire states. We're not just focusing on little markets. So we're getting leads in all sorts of small ass little towns out there.
Yeah.
If you got a lead or a seller in a town of 5,000 people, it's a little bit harder and we can't always dispo them. But, for the most part, we're getting pretty good deals and there are buyers. There's still plenty of buyers out there. There's still people, making a living doing these sorts of things. However, just because it doesn't necessarily fit our buy box, there's plenty of other people out there. So, there's still, to answer your question, no, we're not having an issue finding buyers. If you get a deal, like the hardest part of wholesaling is getting the deal. The dispo is generally easier if it's a deal. Like if it's a legit deal, there's always going to be a buyer out there, just depending on your market. So when you're selling, we're selling to different buyers when we're flipping too, because when we're flipping, we're selling to retail buyers, right? So retail buyers for the last several years, with rates being a little bit higher, they've been very reluctant to, there hasn't been a lot of activity. Inventory was up, days on market were up, as you know, and as such, new properties are just moving a lot slower. How are you seeing the market? You mentioned you're in like 9 different markets. How are you seeing things this year? Are you seeing things start to pick up? Interest rates lowering, market starting to be a little bit more robust, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I think with everything, it's kind of market specific or even sub market specific, right? So you'll see you get into, maybe I won't go into a specific market, but you'll go into some of them and the suburbs are picking up, right? But if you want to buy in the downtown, it may not have picked up. It might be still really long days on markets. Stuff isn't moving. And sometimes it's entire cities and sometimes it's entire states that are just moving a little bit slower. And, it depends on different things certain parts of Florida, it's harder to make numbers work just because the insurance is so high right now. And so it just factors into everything. So long and short, I'd say it's pretty stable as a whole. It's not really going up or down drastically in any of the markets right now is what I'm seeing. So it's kind of just sitting. But there's certain markets that are going up. I'm seeing appreciation on some of my zip codes in Huntsville, some of my zip codes in Kansas City. And then I'm seeing some of my zip codes in Ohio going down, right? So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's not easy to say it's just as a whole is going up or down. It's kind of exactly where you are, right? And what kind of product you have, if it's desirable. Because if there's fewer buyers, and say you're the buyer and you now have more options and you can be more picky, and if you're going to be picky, then you're going to pick a nicer zip code or a nicer school district or lower crime. And so if you're in one of those areas with the high crime and a crappy school district, it might just have fewer people interested in it.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. With our flips in general, the last several years, we've gotten very picky with what we actually take on, curb appeal, making sure the property is desirable.
Yeah.
We've learned that lesson the hard way, right? So yeah, I just think buyers the last several years, it's been a buyer's market. It's transitioning a little bit more to an even market. Things are getting a little bit better. In general, but buyers have been extremely picky, right? They're just got to be on point with your rehabs, got to be on point with your numbers. And if you're not, you're going to take a bit of a bath. And we had a few properties that we did that on, got burned, and such is life. That's his life of being a business owner, an entrepreneur.
Yeah. That's when you just you sit back, you look at it, and maybe go to the backyard for a second and scream, and then come back in and all right, what what could have we done to refine this? Like, I'm always trying to make the system better. Okay, where could we have found this in a different spot? Maybe was there anything we could have done differently, and just keep refining the process. You're like, was there something I could have checked? Was there something I could have done? Is there someone I could have talked to? And then just keep making it better so that, the idea is to continue to make fewer and fewer and fewer mistakes every year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what when you start, you keep effing up as is not a regular occurrence, but it definitely happens. So hopefully, if you're smart, you learn from those mistakes and kind of cut those mistakes down. We're still it's impossible not to have. I feel I usually say that I'm a firefighter running this business because, I don't know about you, but for us, you're always some shit going on. Like someone broke into this house and, we've got a squatter in one of our houses in Atlanta now that we've got under contract. And, it's just crazy to me how squatters have squatter rights. And now we actually have to evict someone that broke into our house is staying there. So just stuff like that is constantly happening. So you're kind of trying to figure out how can I mitigate these sorts of things moving forward. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely. And squatters' rights that's been Georgia. Like, I don't believe there's squatter rights in some of the states I've worked in because we've just had, or maybe my property manager is just a
Yeah.
wild person. I know that they've just been like, I remember the call. They're like, "Hey, someone's in the house," and I'm like, "Did you put a tenant in without telling me?" And I'm like, "No," and they're like, "Okay, I'm gonna go clear the house." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And I remember the first time this happened. They're like, "Yeah, what do you mean?" They're like, "I'm gonna go put a gun on my waist and I'm gonna grab the shotgun out of my trunk and we're gonna go empty the house." And I'm like, "Oh
Like,
shit! You want me to stay on the line, like to call 911? Like what?" And they're like, "No, no." Most of them just get scared and leave. And so I just assume that they don't have any
maybe I need to
squatters.
hire your property manager. They sound more like a
Vigilante.
exactly. We have tried to do things by the book, so we
Oh
don't
yeah, of
bring
course, right? Yeah.
not bringing guns to our. At least I haven't found a contractor that's willing to bring a gun for me to put an ad for that. But no, we've got squatters broke in and they're there. They don't want to leave. So they have rights. Which is just crazy to me. I don't understand how that works. Like if someone broke in, but now they're squatting there. So now we have to legally evict them. So we're in the process of doing that. Super
I
fun
assume they
stuff.
have to be there for a certain period of time before they even considered a squatter. So like, like we were setting up those cameras in a lot of the vacant properties and like to my understanding, which I go is going to be different from state to state, but my understanding was as long as we can, we see them on the camera, if we're there quick, then they're just like breaking in, right?
Yeah.
If they've been there for a certain period of time, then they're squatting.
Yeah. That's my understanding as well. I believe it's a pretty, I don't have the exact number, but I
Yeah, it's
think
going to
it's
be different state to state
a
too.
short period of time because we had the police go there and evict these people. And then they came back. And a few days later, we had the police go back and they said, no, you got to, they're squatters now. So, yeah, super fun stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, great. Woohoo. So yeah, that's like I said, a lot of this business is you're a firefighter. People aren't necessarily always calling me because they've got great news.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're dealing with a bunch of headaches, like you were just telling me about your appraisal, those sorts of things. So
Yeah.
all the
Oh, yeah. No, just if we're going stories about this stuff. So I had a property in Jacksonville and it was for sale and it had the for sale sign on it. And, squatter goes and breaks into the property. And so we knew about it right away. And, police came, put him in jail. Property, because market's a little slower, takes another couple weeks. They let him out of jail. He breaks into the same house again. Send the police, put him back in jail. It just kept happening. We ended up putting temporary bars on all the windows because you just break a window and go in on all the main floor. And you're like, but then that hurts your sale because it looks like it's scary or something. But you're just like,
yeah,
it's this one guy that just keeps going into the property. I think we arrested him 2 or 3 times.
yeah, great, super
Yeah,
fun.
awesome. But anyway, it all
Okay.
it all worked out. We sold it, everything. But just it's just those things that sometimes you can control them, and sometimes there's nothing you can really do.
Yeah, that's one of like I said, both you and I are running these businesses remotely, right? Like I've never been to any of my flips ever. I've never been
Yeah,
to
same.
to any of the properties I own in the US at all, right? For you, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges for Canadians that are looking to do business in the US or to get started? What are some of
Uh,
the
there's lots, and I think a lot of it isn't like necessarily challenges. I think it's just sometimes it's just mistakes or misunderstandings. I think a lot of people do their underwriting with the wrong loan to values and the wrong interest rates for these. They just assume things like they'll go to, the Bank of America website and like, oh, what's the leverage rate? And then they assume that they can get those loans, right? There's a lot of assumptions that aren't correct, right? Is the honest thing, or people set up their corporate structure wrong and then they get the double tax. And then they call me afterwards to try and fix it, which some of the things are completely fixable. Structure's wrong. It's just a lot of mistakes, right? What other ones have they been doing? Paying contractors too much money to start, and then they disappear. It's just a lot of mistakes, and some of it is like they could make those same mistakes buying a property in their backyard.
yeah.
And some of them are, because it's in a different country, and sometimes it's just they've never had to hire all these different people. I've had, some people call me and they've hired property managers that, their contracts are kind of shady, even where they collect rent. One of the biggest property managers in the U.S. I'm not going to name names on it, but in all of their contracts, they collect the property management fee whether they collect the rent or not, which I don't think is right.
God. How is that crazy? What if they put in a tenant that the tenant decides to be non-performing? They're still going to charge you property
Yeah,
management?
exactly. And that's you don't find that out until you find that out. And then like I pulled the contract up because that one actually happened to me. And I pulled the contract up and they're like, no, look at the actual verbiage of it. It's like, the rent is 8% of the rent is what your property management fee is. And your fee every month will be that amount. And you're like, well, isn't it because of how much you collected? And they're like, no, that second clause overwrites the first one, which means that we collect it no matter what. And I'm just like, you're fired.
Wow, that is terrible.
You're
Yeah,
fired.
yeah, I think we will be using another company here.
Yeah,
So
exactly. You're
a
like,
bad tenant who is not paying me now, but you still want to get paid. Okay,
yeah, and
great.
you like you just have to make sure that alignment happens, right? When alignment is out and they're getting paid no matter what, then they're not motivated to get the tenant turnover done. They're not motivated to get the place leased up. They're not motivated to collect the rent, right? You just got to keep everything aligned with everything. And anytime you're doing anything with even joint ventures or contractors, it's all trying to find the best way to align things. Like if you pay a contractor the whole budget before they start, they're not motivated to actually do the renovation.
Yeah. Stuff like that. I think some of the big issues I see with new investors is you got to be conservative with your underwriting. Like you can't be optimistic. We always try and underwrite things at a floor. Like, hey, if this goes wrong or this, what's the minimum we feel confident writing this at? You don't want to underwrite things that saying, hey, if this goes right and this goes right and this goes right, and then projected those numbers because that's a sure way to take a bath or lose money, right? That's
Oh yeah, I think with all of it, you get more and more organized with this, and your contracts get more and more tight as they do stuff. And you like even part of like I have a course, and part of my course is just contract review, like just looking through this, and I'll even review the contracts with them. But there's so much stuff in there for when you're writing contracts that need to be in there. It's documents to collect, and people just miss those steps. And then if the contractor doesn't perform, if you haven't done a proper contract, you haven't collected the proper documents beforehand, you have no recourse to be able to sue them, like do a civil suit, to do like liens on their licenses. All that stuff is gone because the first thing attorneys can say is send me the contract and all their information and all the documents they need. And if you don't have them, then you don't have anything to do, right? So you learn that once, and then you start refining this. So you're like, no, this is how the contracts go. There's a reason we do all these things. There's a reason we ask certain things before we start, and there's a reason we put a lot of stuff in writing because sometimes it's like simple stuff, but good people still things happen in their lives, and they're going to do what they need to do in order to survive, right? They get divorced, something happens, health things, and ultimately if you haven't secured yourself, you're going to be the one that gets taken advantage. And they could have completely positive, good intentions, even at the start or even through the whole project. And when you get down to a pinch, like things happen. And so you just don't want to be the guy at the end of the pinch.
Oh, absolutely. One question I have for you, Glenn. Are you a dual citizen then? You have American and Canadian, is that right? Or
No. So I live in Canada. I live in Ontario, and I have a visa in the United States. And
okay.
so I got my E2 visa, I don't know, a few years ago. And then after I got my visa, I went and got my social security number. And once I had my social security number, I have addresses, utility bills, all that stuff. Then I want to get a US driver's license. And people are like, a lot of people say, why do you get a driver's license? And like the thing is, if you want to go apply for an American loan and you give them your Ontario driver's license as your ID, they're like, how are you getting a true, like an American loan? You're like, so, if you build your credit up and everything, you have all the requirements to do it, but it just raises a red flag. So I went and did everything to, be able to walk and talk and
Yeah,
get the
that
proper loans.
that kind of brings part and parcel to my second question that was a follow-up to that is how are you guys what do you guys do for financing on your properties? Like do you private investors or are you using US institutions or private money lenders or hard money lenders or what are you guys doing?
All.
All
Yeah.
of those.
Yeah. Promissory notes, secured notes, um, well, sometimes my own like money. We use the U.S. lenders, the DSCR lenders, the portfolio lenders. Because I have, my social security number and that, I can do traditional, like conventional lending in the United States as well, which, most Canadians can't, Canadians can't do those kind of loans until you get all those things done. And basic, what else am I missing? Some more, but basically all of them is basically the right answers. It depends on what the project is, what the interest rate you kind of need, and honestly, what the objective of the project is. How long do you need this money for, right? If you need money for a short period of time, you can just use those, fix and flip or construction loans. If you're doing something like that, if you're going to be longer, it's just figuring out, matching the right boxes up.
Yeah, because one of the issues I've seen, I have not gotten a driver's license or social security number there. So one of the issues we run into somewhat regularly is just being a foreign citizen, right? Trying to get credit, or like we like asset-based lenders, and there's a few of those, but a
Yep.
lot of these lenders won't work with Canadians just because obviously we have a US based LLC, but it still makes things a little bit more challenging. How do Canadians kind of typically navigate those kinds of challenges, would you say?
Yeah, so like what helps is to get your credit score going. Um, in all honesty, like I went and built up my business credit score. I don't think anyone cares about that, and to be completely honest, but still pay all your bills. But get your personal credit score even in the U.S. Get something reporting in the U.S. FICO system, right, so that they can pull it up on your like personal American numbers, right? So that helps. Like, but yeah, you can work with all those. The lenders you were talking about, the DSCR, the portfolio, the ones that are asset-based lenders, right off the start. Nobody like Canadians have access to those right off the start, and with all lending, it's about risk for them. So what you want to first do is understand how their underwriting looks, right? So if you know how an American lender is looking at this, like what numbers they need to hit for different types of loans, then the risk goes down. If they have to make exceptions to get the loan to the finish line, either your leverage is going down or your interest rate's going up. So just first understanding how their underwriting works, hit those numbers so you can get the best thing, and then the other thing that doesn't necessarily help your loan, but getting that credit score or FICO score in the U.S., then you combine that with that, and you just seem like less of a risk, right? Like if sometimes they'll say, hey, you can send us your Canadian credit score and your social insurance number, and they could take that into consideration. But like when they type that into like the lending sheets, like with the actual lender, they don't put it in, right? Because they can't use that number. It's not on the same scale. It doesn't, it's calculated slightly differently. They just don't use that number from Canada. But sometimes if you're like, hey, I got an 800 in Canada, you're like, well, it shows that you're likely going to pay us, but we can't actually use it.
Yeah. Makes sense. So if you're a Canadian, then what's the easiest way for you to get started investing in the US? Is it wholesaling or, is it what is it? What would you say?
Oh, that's a tough question. um, the easiest, like, so there's different ways to say this. The easiest way is to just go buy a house, right? Because like the learning curve is going to be a lot lower, right? It may not be the most profitable way to do it, right? Because you might be buying a house that you're paying way too much for, or you're paying too close to market, or you're paying market, right? So the easiest way is just to go buy something, right? And then it's going to be like a lot of times when people buy their first one, even myself, you buy something fairly simple and then you start adding each time more complexity. You're like, hey, I buy the first one, just a simple traditional purchase, and then the next one you're like, hey, let's see if I can figure out how to do a sub too, right? And then next one, let's do a creative financing, and now let's do a wrap, and you just keep adding complexities to it each time. Or honestly, the easier way, which is going to sound really biased, is just get a coach, learn how to do it right from the start, and then learn how to buy it right first. Like so, like I think we were talking. I don't know if we did this on the podcast or it was before we were talking, but go buy a foreclosure, go buy something from a wholesaler, go buy something that's an actual you got some equity in. You found leads on Craigslist, you found someone selling properties, and tied it up direct. You're gonna be if you can buy it cheaper and build equity in before you start is going to be the best project because you're going to have the ability to refi and get your money back or sell it and not be upside down. Like the worst thing is if you buy a house and then something changes in your life and you need to sell it 3 days later and you're upside down, you're like, well, that wasn't a very good deal. You should be able to at least cover your sale costs, and you should have bought it correctly enough to at least do that at the minimum. And ideally you want to be able to do better than that. Like you want to be able to do better than that. Like that's the whole point.
Yeah. You brought up a good point is getting a mentor. The right mentor is kind of, you could bang your head against the wall for several years and try and learn it all, or you can go to an expert like Glenn and kind of get him to tell you what to do and what not to do. That'll kind of cut your learning curve in half. And the money that you're going to pay him, you're going to save probably 10 times over for the mistakes that you're going to make. That's the whole point, right? We had to, I have taken several courses, had, mentors per se, but a lot of this I had to learn on myself. And a lot of those mistakes probably would not have happened if I would have actually paid somebody to do a course here. So
Yeah, it's like you want to pay for the mistakes from doing it, or do you want to pay a little bit up front and maybe sleep at night a little bit better from
yeah, what do you do actually coaching wise, Glenn? Or like you have a course, or do you do any private coaching, or is it just a
Yeah,
course?
so I used to do it where it was just Zoom calls and we'd do like 5-on-1 coaching. And whenever I started following up with the students, I found like half of them did nothing. And I'm like, what's the
Yeah.
point of this? This isn't what the point is. This isn't what it made. So I said, let's stop doing this. And I switched it. So I do like, I have a course now, but when you sign up for the course, you get 4 months of one-on-one time. And then if you want to extend it, you can just extend it, right? And what happens instead, I'm like, hey, go watch the video on, doing a sub two. And then let's sit down on our one-on-one calls and write sub twos. So right now I just be like, you watch the course video and then we'll work together. You watch one on deal analysis, watch one on, doing a wrap, and then we'll sit down and do it. And so right now it's actually what I prefer to do instead of teaching the same thing over and over again. I prefer to sit down and just, we'll open Zoom, open screen sharing, open Excel, and we'll just start putting it in. Or you're like, hey, I'm trying to hire this contractor. I'm like, let's pull up the contract. Let's even go over the call recording you did with your contractor, and let's just fill this thing out. And I'll tell you what to collect. And so we do one-on-one to instead of me teaching you. And I'll be like, just watch the video first. So come prepared so you understand how I do it. And then let's just do shit.
Yeah. Amen to that. All right. Well, great stuff, Glenn. I really appreciate being on your podcast here. Definitely enlightening. It's nice to hear other Canadians. There are other people doing this, but it's very possible to do this as a business full
Oh,
time.
yeah.
full time for the last 6 years. Ups and downs, obviously, markets changed. Like I said, when we first started, Glenn, I was wholesaling and I met a private money partner. Private money partner had a multi 8-figure balance to buy properties. So we were buying properties sight unseen, literally within an hour.
Yeah.
So I had a very good mentor there because they were showing me how to run numbers and this and that. So we buy properties and literally trash them out and then sell them a week later for pretty substantial profit just because the market was pretty crazy. 2019 to 2021, it was.
Oh, it was wild.
Yeah, it was not normal, right? We'd have to underwrite or like recomp properties every month or two just because they were going up so much, right? So things are a little bit different now, but it's still very possible to make a living doing this, right? As a Canadian, like I said, I live full time in Medellín, Colombia for like 7, 8, 9 months of the year. The other 3 months I go back to Vancouver for summer. And
Sounds like the dream. I think that's what a lot of people are looking to do.
Do this all remotely. With my team is around the world. I've got people in Vancouver, South America to Asia. So there's people all over the world helping me manage this, but it's all done very remotely. So it is absolutely possible to be a Canadian investor or Canadian real estate entrepreneur working in the United States from any part of the world. It's just you're only limited by your imagination. So, yeah.
If people are like listening to this and they're like, hey, I want to work with Jagger, I want to get on this list, or I'm like, hey, he's got Georgia stuff, I'm interested in Georgia. He's got Northern Alabama stuff, I'm interested in Northern Alabama. How do they get on your list? How do they get to see or buy something from you?
Yeah, sure. Feel free to drop me an email. My email is Jagger, Jagger, at cashhousebuyers, BUYERS, the number 4, and then you.com. Just drop me an email. Glad to connect with anybody. I'm always happy. I'm an open book for most things to help people, or if any Canadians listening to this have any questions or want some resources, or want to just chat real estate, I'm super happy to do so. Obviously, I'm a little bit busy, so if I don't get back to you right away, just hang in there or send me a follow-up email. But super glad to connect. Appreciate your time. And hopefully the market keeps chugging along. I'm seeing signs that it's slowly started to improve. Like I said, the last year and a half, flipping for us has been a little bit slow, but wholesaling is being pretty fruitful so far. So
I love it. Jagger, thank you for coming on the podcast. Lots of insights. Like, no, I'm not even just like, sounds like a BS answer on the out, but actually this was a good one. Like, the lots of stuff we went into, and I think people going to take stuff away from this, and I imagine you're probably going to get a few emails. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate your time. Get back to enjoying your day and doing your thing, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
That was a nice video. Bye.